Good evening and welcome to the February Entrepreneur Speaker Series with Ayinde Alakoye. My name is Mike Panessis. I'm the Executive Director of the Stephen Dorfman Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, and I'll be your host tonight. Welcome, nēdl. We're in this incredible age of communication where the way that we communicate with each other is changing. Some of it looks familiar. Like I look at podcasters and it seems to me like old school radio, right? Where you don't need video, you don't need props, you just talk. And it's a wonderful way to get your point across, to be inspiring, and to leave people having learned a lesson. So I'm really excited to hear Ayinde's talk today. We met probably a couple of years ago.
In 2018, it was right when I was expecting my first child.
That's right.
First
That's
and only.
right. Yeah, that bubbled to the top of the founders' priorities. It was at a Pepperdine event.
Yeah, we won the most. We were being presented the Most Fundable Companies award.
Most Fundable Company. Yeah, that's right. And then a year and a half later, I'm a big fan of equity crowdfunding. I think it's a great way to fund startups. They're platforms where anybody can invest in startups for as little as $100 at a time. And I saw nēdl pop up on my list of opportunities eligible for investment. And I did my little equity crowdfunding investment. And I almost immediately got an email from him. He remembered me and wanted to catch up. And I was just so impressed that after all that time had passed, that he had remembered me. And I think that what he's working on with nēdl is really interesting and is the future of the way we communicate with audiences. That's really unique and interesting. But I will leave it to Ayinde to tell you his story and to tell both us and his nēdl audience about his story. So Ayinde, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for saying that about the nēdl audience. I felt like I was neglecting them a little bit. So hi everybody today here on the Zoom and everybody live on nēdl. My name is Ayinde and I am the founder of nēdl, as in the haystack. We are a company that is democratizing access to information and the microphone itself. And the way that we are doing that is by giving all of you, I think 100 people registered for this event, all of you, your own live call-in radio station. So if you've ever wanted to own your own live call-in radio station for free, you now have that opportunity, and you didn't have to get an FCC license to do it. I'm sharing my screen right now because I wanted you to see what's happening on the app, where people are joining the conversation. They can comment in the audience. They can also call in. I think Patty is in queue right now. We'll take some callers a little bit later. And as you can see from the screen, or you should be able to see from the screen, that there are live transcriptions. And I think someone had mentioned IWW that was transcribed. And so it's very inclusive. People can, who are hearing impaired or people who are deaf can follow along with this audio boom that's happening right now. And the reason why we do the transcripts is so that my words and your words are searchable in real time. So your words and the things that you're saying are just as important as anyone else. And so we give people the opportunity to search for IWW or any other keyword in real time, and discover live conversations that are happening right now discussing that keyword. So that's kind of nēdl in a nutshell. I'll tell you a little bit more about it a little bit later, but
I wanted to.
Yes.
Just want to quickly interrupt here. Hello. We have someone in the chat who perhaps you can help her get a little bit further. She seems to be stuck. she downloaded the app but can't enter a handle. Is this something that she has to do for her profile, or is this something that access to get to your Needlecast?
Yeah, so she can choose a handle that is 6 characters or more, and 6 characters or more. So, so if if her name is Henrietta, she can have that. She can own her name. You don't often get to own your name on a social media app these days. So our early signups are able to own their names, and then after she agrees, after she sees a little check mark, she'll be taken to the next screen so that she can enter the app.
Thanks so much.
Hopefully that helps. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And please keep the questions coming. Totally fine. Stopping, starting, or whatever. I'm going to give you my story. First of all, my talk is listening to that little voice. And I'm going to give you my story in 3 parts. The first part is pre-radio. The second part is radio. And the third part, you guessed it, is post-radio. By way of introduction, I started my career in Washington, D.C., where I'm from. I fell in love with radio at a very young age, and I'll tell you that story. But I'm also going to tell you about the little voices that you listen to or that you don't listen to. And but first, I want to talk about those voices. So there's 2 types of voices that I think that are important. There's the little voice that's internal, and there's the little voice that's external. So I'll give you an example of the internal voice. You're probably all familiar with it. You're walking down the street. That little voice inside tells you to turn left or to turn right. You turn right, and you listen to that voice, and you bump into an old friend that you hadn't seen for a long time, right? So that's an example of your intuition. But then there's also the external voice, which might be you want to buy a handbag, and you ask your best friend or your mom, should I buy this handbag? And they say, no, you shouldn't because of X, Y, and Z. And you do it anyway, and you end up regretting that. So that's an example of an external little voice. And the reason why it's a little voice is because the voice's size is determined by how big your opportunity is, or how big you see your that obstacle that's in front of you, right? So because it drowns out those voices that we hear. So all of my success has come from, and Mike and I were laughing about it before the call, has come from listening to that little voice. And so the first, I guess, example of that little voice was back in DC, where I grew up. And my mom was a widow. I lost my dad right before I turned 8 years old, which meant that my mom had to work multiple jobs to keep us, fed and clothed and educated. And we moved further and further out from DC into the suburbs. At that time, we could get to better public schools that way. So I went to like 5 different schools. We moved 5 different times. But as a result, that means that you're meeting new friends, which I learned to do pretty well. But then it also means that you're saying goodbye to friends. And for me, what that meant was that I needed to stay connected in a time when there weren't cell phones and all the different ways that you could stay connected today. For me, at that time, it was radio, because I knew that my friends were still listening to radio at the same time that I was listening to radio. And that made me feel connected to them, even though I couldn't see them. And so I fell in love with radio at a very young age. And it's not a big surprise that I would grow up to work in radio. But I also fell in love with volleyball around that time. And I ended up getting a Division I, not really a scholarship, but a way to help pay for school. And I went to Juniata College for 4 years, graduated, came back down, and then studied political science. And like every self-respecting Washingtonian who studies political science, as soon as you get out of school, you go to work on Capitol Hill. And so that's what I did for the first 1.5 years. And then in that process, I got really disenchanted with the political system and felt like what needed to happen for me, if I was really going to make change, is that I needed to, as they say today, grab a bag, but I needed to get wealthy and then be able to come back to the system and change it from the outside. And so I started to explore options, and it was right about that time that that I was approached by some really well-dressed, two really well-dressed gentlemen while I was at my part-time job, because I could only afford beans to eat on Capitol Hill. And they approached me about a multi-level marketing business. And that didn't turn me off at the time, because I had never really thought about being an entrepreneur formally. Before that moment, I had worked through college drawing portraits for people to make money so I could go home on the train. Right before the holidays, so I would draw portraits that they could take home to their family as a gift, or I would cut hair. And so I did entrepreneurial things my entire life, but I never really had like maybe a group of people kind of invite me into the experience. So at a 24-year-old, that was an amazing opportunity, because I learned so much about how to dress and comport myself and speak and so forth and present. And I jumped at that opportunity after I listened to that little voice, because it was kind of crazy, because you're thinking that there's only one way to, you grow up in the most traditional place in the country, perhaps Washington, D.C. So you're thinking 9 to 5 is the only way. And obviously entrepreneurship is 24/7. And I never really thought about it before that moment. So I did listen to that little voice, and I took a chance, and I started a business, but that business led me into sales. And about 2 years later, I became a top salesperson for a very reputable health insurance company at the time. So I got my I think it's a Series 7 license to sell life and health insurance back in Maryland. Became a top salesperson for that company before I quit the job. So 11 months in, I had to quit my job. I had made my budget every single month up to that point, made or exceeded my budget. And I was feeling really great about my performance, but horrible about my job. You see, the way that I got my job there in sales was I applied for it from the member services department. And the hiring manager flatly said no. And rather than take that no, I was very persistent and went to the CEO. And I made an appointment with the CEO, sat down with him at I must have been 22, 23 years old. And I'm sitting down in front of this 55, 60-year-old man. And I'm telling him that I'd be great in the sales department. And his response was very simple and very easy to understand. Anybody who had the guts to make an appointment to sit down in front of me to ask for a job in sales is probably going to be a good salesperson. So he gave me the job. Unfortunately, I learned a very important lesson that when you go over somebody's head like that, they're not going to be happy managing you in the future. So she made my life a living hell for the next 11 months. And so I chose to leave rather than have a heart attack at 23. And I told my mom, I said, and this is where the second voice happened. I told my mom, I said, look, I just quit my job. She goes, you need to go down to the unemployment office to find a new job. And I said, come on, Mom. Like, I was feeling really good about myself. I was making $28,000, and I was on track to make $35,000 or $37,000. And I felt very haughty. And I said to her, like, they don't have a job like that down at the unemployment office. And I listened to my mom anyway. And I went down, and sure enough, the job that they had for me to interview for was WTOP. Now, I didn't know at the time that there was any money at all in radio. I didn't know that radio was a $44.1 billion global advertising industry. I didn't know anything about radio. All I knew is that it came through my speakers and I liked it. And sure enough, I started at WTOP in '97. My first year, I made $80,000 or over $80,000, which was completely incredible and unheard of for me and anyone in my family at the time. And so it was a big surprise, and it was very good that I listened to my mom. Now at that time, it was a very little voice because I had these preconceived ideas, which were the very big ideas about what could be done and what job I should have and who I was at the time. And had I not listened to that little voice that was almost drowned out by my ego, I wouldn't have become a radio salesperson, which triggered the next part of the story, right? So that was pre-radio, and now we're in radio. And radio was an amazing experience. I became the top salesperson for WTOP before I got recruited by AM/FM in Los Angeles. But it didn't really kind of happen like that. The real story behind that is that I was a former Division I volleyball player who loved the game of volleyball so much that he couldn't let it go. And I actually only played 1 year in college. We won the championship, and then I left the team. So I had a lot in the tank. Does anybody in the audience, you can unmute yourself to anybody remember the movie Rudy? Anyone in the audience remember the movie Rudy? If you want to be inspired, while you're sitting at home in semi-quarantine, watch the movie Rudy. And a number of sports movies like Vision Quest, they inspired me to decide to take my successful career and leave it to play volleyball professionally from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles on the beaches here in Santa Monica, where I live now. And that was a crazy idea because I was living in D.C. doing the normal D.C. thing. And the idea of uprooting to play professional beach volleyball was ridiculous. But I prayed and I said, what is the thing that I do the best, and what is the thing that I feel like I could make the most impact in the world? And that was the answer. And so I found, through a series of events, I found a job and got recruited by AM/FM, moved out to LA in 2000, became the top salesperson for KFI, so the largest direct deal in LA history, and then got recruited by CBS and Howard Stern. And then the very week that I started, the very next week after my first week on the job, was 9/11. So it was 9/11 that after 2 years of just kind of being in LA, living the dream, doing extremely well. I think at the time, and this is for context and a little bit of my own astonishment too, so bear with me, but at the time, my base salary at CBS, where I had just started work, adjusting for inflation, was $250,000 a year before commissions, right? So base salary. I was 29 years old. I was living the dream, but I was completely and totally unfulfilled. I felt hollow. I felt like I was selling my soul. I didn't feel like I could relate to anybody, talk to anybody. I didn't have any passion or any love for what I was doing. And then 9/11 happened, and it really kind of shook me, like many Americans. And I looked at myself and my life, and I said, I moved out here to play professional beach volleyball. So much to my mother's chagrin, I quit my high-paying job, and I became a beach bum for the next year and a half. And and that's really how my entrepreneurial experience started. So this is post-radio now. For the last year and a half, I've lived on the beach and worked on the beach. I took it very seriously. I went 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day. But I couldn't work in a cubicle anymore. So what do? So what does anybody with no money who's exhausted all their savings do? You start your own business. And that's what I did. I started a company called Thumb Radio because I loved radio and I loved Snoop Dogg, but living in Los Angeles, I didn't love listening to Snoop Dogg on repeat 24/7 on the radio. It was really hard, so hard. But I knew that you could listen to any radio station in the world on your cell phone. I knew the technology existed, but it just never been done before. And so that's what Thumb Radio was to do. It was to allow me to listen to my go-go music and my WTOP and all the things that I missed from home on my cell phone. And so that eventually became a partnership with my old boss, Clear Channel. We were the first company to stream radio stations on a mobile phone. Keep in mind, this is 2003 now. This is before there was an iPhone, before there was an app store. And we partnered in 2007, and that became iHeartRadio. Now that's many lessons later. I learned how I could have participated in the upside of that, but didn't. But it was a great experience, great learning experience. And my next company, this is my third company I'm on today, but my next company, the second company, was Hitch Radio to make radio social. And we were able to raise capital in that company. And then we started, in 2017, we started nēdl, but not before I heard one last voice. And so that voice was, what were the things that I learned from all of the other experiences? What were the things that were the most valuable about Hitch Radio? And finally, what did people always ask for, but I never listened to them. I never gave it to them. So people always wanted to search, like searching was a very popular thing. And they always asked to start their own radio station. And I always said, no, leave it to the professionals, leave it to the professionals. And so with nēdl, we turned it over to you. And so that's how we started nēdl in 2017. And obviously in 2020, because of all the things that happened in our country, audio has exploded, and we're super excited about the opportunity that we have today with nēdl in 2021. Can't believe we're saying those words, 2021, but that's where we are, and that's my story.
Thank you very much, Ayinde.
So I'd love to take questions from you all and ask and answer any questions that you have about your business. I always say that, so I did promise to tell you that what not to listen to. I can tell you how to start a business, all right? I can't tell you how to raise Series A capital. I can tell you how to be scrappy. I can tell you how to raise seed capital. So always the voices to listen to are the voices who have done it before, and I will be careful not to try to advise you on things that I haven't done.
So thank you very much. You can raise, if you want to ask a question, you can raise your hand on screen. You can use the raise hand button for Zoom. If you're in nēdl, you can ask the question in the chat box, and we'll bubble it up to Zoom so that we can make sure that it gets asked. So I saw Naomi's hand raised first. So Naomi, would you like to ask a question?
Ready now?
Yep.
How did you find the people to work with to grow your business?
Great question, Naomi, and nice to meet you. Which business are you talking about, or just in general?
In general.
Great. So let me answer your question the best way I know how. If you want to add more color to it, please go ahead. It feels like a loaded question to me because the the startup game plan, right? Like this mold that startups have to fit into, is two Ivy League college students, usually European American, are in a dorm room someplace and they have an idea, and they're 20 years old, so they have no risk really to do this idea, and that's usually like the mold that gets invested in, right? So you create this network, and then you're hiring people, and all the diversity challenges that are being explored today happen because of that sort of mold. So with me, and that's by the way, it's normal. That's not like an intentional thing on the part of those college students. That's what they know. That's who they're around, and that's typically how it happens, right? So who I was around, I had a buddy of mine for the first company called Thumb Radio, the first company, but he was in music. He was in the music business, and he was the first like really good friend that I met in LA. We just clicked immediately. We were both basketball fans, and we just had a ton in common in terms of how we saw the world. And I asked him, if he wanted to be my business partner. And at the time, people weren't using the word startup either. So we became partners. But in retrospect, it probably wasn't the best partnership. Like he didn't have startup mindset or kind of a background, or and for what I was relying on him to do, it was unfair, right? So it wasn't like an ideal situation for the business that we were starting. So I don't know if I answered that question, but then in the second time around, I actually started the second company with him as well, but then he left. We're still friends today, by the way. And we have baby girls that are 2 weeks apart, by the way. But the second company, my co-founder was introduced to me through an investor, and that was a much better fit. Still not totally perfect, but a much better fit. And so sometimes investors can help.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope I answered your question.
You did.
A quick follow-up for that last part. Sometimes can your little voice lead you astray?
Okay. So if I'm going to be like super spiritual about it, like nothing can be astray because it'll all figure itself out.
Where you're meant to go. Yeah.
and
That's a good answer.
And I think the main thing is, we don't know, right? Nobody knows anything. We're all figuring, if the pandemic has taught us anything, we're all figuring out things as we go. God bless Texas. They're figuring it out as they go right now. But I think the key is having some core principles and values that guide your listening, and then making sure that voice like is you're putting one foot in front of the other, is the easiest way that I can say it.
Wonderful. Excellent answer. Is that Michael Agnew?
Yes.
Daniel Agnew.
No, Michael. Yeah.
Hey, Michael.
I used my sons for some reason. Hey, Ayinde. Have you heard of the Radio Garden app?
Yes, you're literally the second person to ask me that this week, and I have a story about it, but I'll let you ask your question.
As I was listening to you, the radio portion of your presentation, and your passion behind it and what you've done with iHeart, and it's just I was imagining, being able to listen to any radio station worldwide, and I got And I just literally got introduced to Radio Garden. I'm in the specialty coffee world. I'm a third generation from Ethiopia originally. And we had a WhatsApp group discussion between producers from worldwide. And at that time, it was presented to us, hey, why don't you use this? And I used it. It was fascinating. So I just wanted to see what you thought of it. And that's a just simple question, right?
Thank you, Michael. So for those of you who are not familiar, Radio Garden is I don't know if it's radiogarden.com, but it's an easy search. You'll find it. Allows you to almost spin the globe and then see the different points of light. And you can basically listen to any radio station on the planet from, and it's what it is, it's a very visual and very tactile experience of finding radio stations. And it's fun. And so I laughed because, so I laughed because in 2011, if you go to the Wayback Machine on the Internet Archives, you'll see Hitch Radio had a map where you could see the different radio stations all over the world. So when it's great. I see that, and they've done a great job of getting radio out to people. We're not done yet with our vision for this, and I think it's going to be really exciting to see how we add back all of those other radio stations that we have access to on this platform today.
Excellent.
Thank you, man.
Great honor to meet you.
It's my honor. Thank you so much.
Michael's a Cal Lutheran alum too. We're very proud of him. Rolf.
Okay, I think that was me. Yeah, hi there. First of all, great story. Love hearing it. And I really love what you've done as an entrepreneur, especially, even though you seem to have slid into it more than anything else. But who cares? What matters is the results. I noticed your equity crowdfunding campaign from last year, where it looks like you raised about 75K. I personally happen to be a serial entrepreneur with 12 startups so far, but that's over 40 years. And I'm deeply fascinated with equity crowdfunding as a new source of funding for startups between friends and family and angel, especially nowadays, because you can lump all of the small investors, to all intents and purposes, into a special vehicle that's a single entry on your cap table, so you can still go after angel or VC down the road if that really still is necessary. So my question for you is basically, I noticed that you did this on a convertible note. My real question is why, as opposed to a safe?
Oh, okay. So great question. Thank you so much. Congratulations on, did you say 18 businesses?
No, 12. Only 12.
12. Amazing. So nēdl has so far raised $1.6 million. Our seed round was led by Sweet Capital in the Candy Crush people in 2018. Actually, literally, as soon as we were, the big announcement when I met Mike was that we had just signed the deal, and it was like right before my daughter was born, so it was like perfect timing, right? So
congratulations.
so thank you. Yeah. And then this equity crowdfunding opportunity came to us, kind of fell in our lap, and we did it. We were as successful as we wanted to be with it. We wanted to just raise some capital to get us through some of the toughest days of the pandemic, which we were able to do. We did it on a convertible note because that's what we were familiar with. Have we ever raised on a safe?
Probably not.
We put a safe out there, and so making sure everybody is familiar with the terms convertible note and safe note. The safe note is a slightly different instrument, but the convertible note basically says that, I'm sure you guys are all familiar, but maybe there's some people online who don't know, because remember, people are listening on nēdl on the web as well.
Sure.
So the convertible note basically says that we're going to let the market determine the price. We're not going to try to price ourselves right now because it's too early, and we're going to simply put a cap on what the next valuation will be. Sometimes they have caps, sometimes they don't. Usually they do, and that's how we raised it. We did it on a $5 million cap for early birds, because that's what we did our original seed round on, and then an $8.5 million cap was the bulk of the raise. And so we just did it because we're comfortable with it. I think the most important thing about choosing safe or convertible is your network and what comfort level you have in talking about the instrument, and then what comfort level most of the investors that you're talking to have. In LA, are you in LA, Ralph?
I'm in Santa Monica.
Yeah, okay, good. We are neighbors. So in LA, my experience is most people are comfortable with convertible notes. It started to shift about 2 years ago where people were doing safe notes, but I think it's back to convertible notes, and I don't think that people care much.
No, you're
Took a while
quite
to
right. I don't
catch
want
on.
to. Oops. Don't want to take too much time. The reason why I was asking is because I was not aware that you are also having separate rounds. In other words, if it was your first round and only round so far,
Oh yeah,
then it's like a foundation for a house. You
Sure.
only get to make it once.
sure.
And safe from an entrepreneur's point of view is the safest option. But
Yes.
I shall leave this floor at that. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. It's great question.
Thank you. David, you're up next.
All right, good evening, Ayinde. I just wanted to ask for a non-technical entrepreneur, how do you take an idea and make it tangible to the point where it's worth investing?
Great. What are you working on?
Thinking about a social platform for creatives.
Social platform for creators. Fantastic. So the thing that I tell people is the first thing that you need to do is make $1,000, right? Like that's the first thing that I tell startups. With a social network, you need to get engagement, right? That's your $1,000. So are you familiar with design thinking? The concept of design thinking, David?
Yeah, I'm taking an intro to the design class right now, actually.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So basically, it's like minimum viable experience or minimum viable experience or product. But the way that I learned it at Matter VC, one of our investors, we did an accelerator for 5 months in San Francisco. That was incredible because it was like, anyway, long story. But the most important thing is just to prove it out, even if you do it on pieces of paper. Like even if you're just taking pictures of a crowd that you got together that all said that they wanted to have this experience that you're designing. So I think I think it's really like there's no money that's needed, and it's just a matter of figuring out what the smallest common denominator of what you're building is, and getting people to buy in on that, whether it's with a landing page or not. Once you have that, then I think that you're able to attract the next thing, because I think what you're saying is, how do you attract the technical founders?
Right, pretty much.
Yeah, so those people are going to be attracted to the traction that you get, and they're going to be attracted to the hustle that you show in getting that traction, that initial traction. Are you looking for forums to do that, or are you just asking how in general would you
Just how in general, because I feel like a lot of us will get these $1 million ideas, but because we don't feel like we have the technical capabilities of, a Mark Zuckerberg to actually like code ourselves, that, well, How do we take that paper idea and actually make it worth someone's money, worth someone's money, excuse me.
Yeah, I think it's really, really simple. If you can sell a product, get $1,000 of sales, and you'll figure out how to do like if you're a startup entrepreneur, you should be able to figure out how to make $1,000. Like how do I get 1,000 people to pay $1 or one person to pay $1,000 to make it like a viable, like for me, that's when it becomes like, oh, okay, that's kind of real capital. And if you can reproduce it, then it's even more, right? Give you an example. We were in 2017, we were trying to figure out what to do. And I to raise capital. And I was like, look, let's see if we can get to our first $1,000. And I started to make calls to my old radio people. And then I found one of my old bosses who needed transcriptions. And with nēdl, as you saw from the screenshot that we shared, we transcribe your words as you speak. And so our first $1,000 was $2,009, I think it was, from selling transcriptions to radio stations. So there's and then there was a question of, are we going to make that our business? And then anyway, the point is, sell that first $1,000, and then that gives you the traction to attract the team and the investors that you need to grow the business.
David, make sure you check out in the
Thank
chat
you.
box. Kristen dropped in some resources that we recommend to the non-technicians to do like a mock-up of your app. And if you're a designer, that makes it even easier because you know how to make it look appealing, but at least to show how it flows and how it works.
Hang on one second. I'm just going to grab something real
Thank
quick.
you very much.
Yeah, Marvel app is great for people with no technical skills. You can do prototyping of an iWatch or Apple Watch, phone, website, anything. So
Our students use it in class a lot.
I want to show you something real quick before we take the next call. And I know I'm taking too long in this answer, but I just found this thing. So a buddy of mine and I designed this. And this was a prototype that we designed for a wallet. So what we did was we did a needs assessment. We figured out, we did interviews, and we figured out what the customer needed. And then he actually, because I remember that he did this, he created a wallet that would serve my needs like this. So like this was the technology, right? And then you would find a way to show traction by pre-selling this or doing this. So it can be crude is the point. And this was an exercise that we did at Matter VC.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you. I think Dennis Washburn, you're next.
Had to unmute. Thank you for the presentation and the creative thinking. I have a friend that was in the radio business doing production management and systems and automation. And it makes me ask the question of you, what's the mechanical platform or the technology that you employ to make the radio work? Whether it's, a platform or equipment or mechanics, and if it's delivered via, a digital device, a phone or, a laptop or something to that effect, what's your input mechanism?
Yeah, thank you. Fantastic question, because it gets to the core of the radio business. So so our app so ours is an app. You download it from iOS, and then I'll give you the sneak peek that next week you'll be able to download it from, well, fingers crossed, Android. And so the platform is using your mobile phone. Here's what's changed, right? So because of automation and also, sometimes technology is faster than the human mind can actually figure out. Oh,
Sure, yeah.
you know? And so what we've done is we've said, basically this app that's transcribing my words as I'm speaking and allowing me to broadcast live to Singapore or whoever else is listening on the World Wide Web. This app is saying to radio, all of broadcast radio, you don't need a tower anymore. Now, in emergency situations, you need a tower. But what is radio? Radio are the people in the studio, the talent, the producers, the people who actually create the content that is saleable to advertisers and to consumers, right? So what do you need a tower for? So that's what this is.
Well, you use the existing probably 5G tower network that exists now.
Yeah, exactly. Good.
And who knows when it goes to 6 or 7G, you know,
Yeah.
ultimately that, you know, that just,
Yeah.
that ensures your success, ultimately, I would think.
Yeah, actually, you said it better. We're just upgrading our towers from one tower to the next. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our last question, LaQuisha.
Thank you. I'm really excited. I really don't know. Thank you for your time. Thank you guys for this platform. I don't really know which question I want to ask, but I know it's like the end here. So I'm kind of like one of those people that does things like ahead. And you had mentioned about that global site that shows you know, radio stations all over. I haven't heard of it, so it's hard for me to restate what it was called. But how do you somehow like flatten the curve of being ahead of the curve, and then you're not like, you don't make sense yet, and then like 5 years later you do, but like someone else takes it, and should you even create anything, which I feel like I know the answer to that, if you're irrelevant because you're ahead? I don't know if that makes any sense.
It makes total sense.
For encouragement.
It
Okay.
makes, okay, so we started in 2017, and then Clubhouse came out in 2020, and is now worth $1 billion, right? So, but the thing is that they brought some real value to the marketplace in how they were interpreting what we were trying to do. They also brought a ton of attention to our product. We've had a ton of new users because of Clubhouse that would have never discovered it. And I think that we're long-term gonna do, because we're actually, I think, in a bigger market than Clubhouse. So we're not really, I was gonna say something to Mike about the write-up there, because I don't really feel like we're directly competitive with Clubhouse. I think we're doing a different market. So the bottom line with businesses is that the business is you. Now, it's weird because for your mental health, you have to make sure that you do not combine the business with who you are as a human being, because if the business goes down, you still have to live, right? You still have to move forward and do the next thing. But from a standpoint of the creativity that you've born it with, that you've birthed it with, the business is you. This is me connecting with my friends when I was a kid. That's what this is, right? And so because the business is you, Clubhouse can never copy what we did or are doing. They can only do their business, which is them. So there are going to be people that come and have similar ideas. If you are an innovator, you're going to be ahead of the market. Your job is to find ways to interpret your large vision in small ways until the market catches up to you. And that's the best way I can answer that.
Quisha, do you have another question, please?
Oh, sure. Oh gosh. Okay.
Okay, we'll stay here as long as you like.
Oh, thank you. Bless you. Okay. So I'm not really a salesperson. Actually, I feel like I'm good at sales, but it gets slimy a little bit for me. Like it's kind of feels like manipulation sometimes, like as far as the way that when I worked in retail, that was the head, that was their way of encouraging us to sell, was you know, don't care about the customer. We just want our money. So whatever you have to do, you know, to get us money is what we value. We don't value the customer. So I kind of had
How did that work out for that company?
Well, am I allowed to say the company name? They're still around. They're perfectly fine. But it's sales driven, and I value people. I don't want to you know, let's say I was selling art frames. I was a framer, and I could tell some people didn't have that money, but my boss would want me to sell or upsell, you know, to a very expensive frame. I didn't feel comfortable doing that. So in their eyes, I'm not a successful salesperson, but I'm just a salesperson that cares about people. So as an entrepreneur, but I'm more of an entrepreneur in my confession than any practice. I don't have a successful business yet. But anyway, I'm really curious, like, how do I not feel slimy about sales? How do I sell and get an idea across that is going to benefit people and find my people without feeling like I'm doing manipulation or something like that?
Excellent question. The first thing that comes to mind is take a sales course. So there's a couple of courses that I'm sure that, like today with everything being so democratized, I'm sure that you can find a free course to take. But there's customer CSS is the one that that kind of trained me in terms of thinking about it from the buyer's perspective. I could not have achieved the sales that I achieved if I was doing that. Maybe some people could, but I couldn't because I wouldn't be able to live with myself. I think the compassion that you bring to the thought process of sales is what makes a very good salesperson. But I think that you have something that's stopping you from thinking that if somebody gives you money, that you haven't done something dirty at all. And so I think the first thing that you have to do, everybody would be different, but I think the first thing that you have to do is get over that idea, because there's just the law of reciprocity, right? So the law of reciprocity is, if I give you something of value, I expect something I can expect something of value in return, right? That's just reciprocity. So I think the main thing is for you to figure out a way to get over that. And I think you can do it with training. Maybe it's just watching a few YouTube videos that aren't coming from that slimy manipulative perspective that does exist. I think another thing that you can do is to understand what the value is that you're offering. And the best way to understand what the value is that you're offering, and some of it might have to do with self-love and all the other things that you do as a human being on a daily basis to just be a better person. But I think the best way to understand the value that you're offering is to go in really deep with who you're trying to serve and figure out what is it that they're needing. And then you'll be able to know that you've done a good job when they've given you money and they tell you thank you, right?
Yeah, that's also it's one of the reasons why lots of people become entrepreneurs. It's not just to sell someone something, it's to sell them something that they find value in that makes them happy. And that's a personal decision you have to make. You want to make sure you don't end up with a company that just cares about how much money they're making. It's deeper than that. You want to make someone happy.
Yeah, you say happy. I say the same thing. I say adding increase, right? Yeah. I want to make sure that when people come to nēdl, I've given them something that they didn't have before. And in our way, it's a radio station, and in your way, it may be something different. Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome. Okay, we have one more question from Dennis, and then I think we've got to wrap up.
It's actually it's a comment that helps folks who might be struggling with this part of the discussion. In mediation training, among the things that you learn is that the people solve their own problems and write their own agreements if it's going to be something that doesn't require litigation or arbitration where somebody else makes the decision. one of the formulae is actually looking at the needs and interests of the party who's either buying or frankly selling, for that matter, instead of wants and desires. If you're addressing needs and interests, the sales is almost an automatic outcome of the exchange that you're in. That's the comment, not a question.
Thank
Great
you.
comment.
Okay. Boy, that hour went by quickly. Thank you very much, Ayinde, for your story and for your wisdom. And I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for that Android app. No pressure, but
no
this
pressure
was-
felt. I don't think about it on my way to sleep every night or the first thing when I wake up at all. Thank you so much, everyone, for having me and for listening. Hopefully download the nēdl app and start your own radio station. Hopefully it brings value to you and your businesses. Thank you so much, Mike.
Thank
And
you very
thank you,
much.
Kristen.